Nova Scotia's EMO asked to use the hall as a registration centre for residents of Portapique who had fled their homes.
For residents of Portapique who had fled their homes.
An RCMP officer was posted here in a cruiser. By this time, police were on the hunt for the shooter, who they knew was impersonating a police officer. At 10:30 a.m., 2 RCMP officers fired multiple shots outside the hall. Sources have told CTV News the officers thought they were firing at the suspect, when it was in fact a fellow Mountie.
This program is brought to you in part by...
Why don't you get yourself some turned-down collars, Poirot? They're much more the thing, you know.
The thing, Hastings? Do you think Poirot concerns himself with mere thingness?
No. No, I see that.
The turned-down collar is the first symptom of decay of the grey cells.
You know, I just think if people keep pushing, I can't, first of all, thank enough all of the hard work. There's 3 fellow YouTubers who are working very, very hard with me on this one. Rage in the Cage, Steve LTT, and Just My Stupid Opinion. Just plugging them, sorry. But they are fantastic guys, really been busting their humps here. And, you know, stepping up to the plate, because there's a certain amount of risk saying certain things. And also, likewise, all of the people who are volunteering information and time, which is, like I said, over on the Discord or sending me anonymously information, it is fantastic.
Evening. Okay. How's it going down there? Of course, I'm talking to down there probably, right? Most of all. Who all we got here? Ryan, how you doing? Christina, Truth and All, Nova Scotia guy. Tess, Nicholson, Bush Baby, Beth, Live Life. Lynn, I probably got that wrong. Oh dear is in the house. Mark Evans. Rob Dares. All right. Well, okay. Now, this is interesting because I'm trying to find the... They're not liking what's going on here, you know. So I'm trying to find actual podcast. I find this on my channel sometimes too, where they don't want to show things. I don't know if you guys get that sometimes, where videos just don't pop up because we're 5 minutes away and there's no live broadcast showing up. Odd. Sharon's in the house. Randy, Alex, Sharon. I'm so overdue with the video, aren't I? So overdue on so much homework. I feel like I'm, yeah, anyway. Well, we got to do the follow-up. I think we can just couple all of it together with the follow-up. Well, you know, I'm trying to find, if anybody else can find it, maybe you can let me know. Maybe it'll pop up in your guys' feed, because it certainly is not popping up in mine. Yes, I am what? Disorganized? That's it for sure. Stinks to high heaven. I am not family. I can be reached on Facebook. All right. And you're not a troll. It's always good to know that somebody's not a troll, isn't it? Well, this would be embarrassing if they just kind of buried it, wouldn't it? I'd feel kind of like a fool. Cheryl's in the house. It's just not showing up. I've left details in the description box below for the Nighttime Podcast. I actually have listened to Nighttime Podcast a few times prior to this, just because of some other stories. So should be interesting. Had a very good chat with Jordan. I don't know if I should be addressing him in that familiarity. Kendall Green Bastard. Is it Kendall Green Bastard? No, Kendall and Green Bastard. Okay. Aussie Todd. Not a troll, but a Mossad recruiter. Yes, we need our local Mossad recruiter. This is just not showing up, and there's 2 minutes left. This is pretty nutty. Still not showing up. Anybody else? Is it coming on for anybody else? A notification? Oi, soy. What is that? Hello? Hey.
Where is the Paul thing?
Just in case you guys didn't know, that's Steve on the line.
Oh, you're streaming?
I am streaming because I'm trying to get the check your messenger. I sent you pictures. Yes, I saw the pictures. Jill.
Oh, okay, so that's why you sent me the StreamYard link. Got it.
Yeah, I'm gonna. What I'll do is I'm gonna stream Paul here first, and then we're gonna hop over to the other channel. So just so that everybody knows, after Paul's done, we're going over to Nighttime Podcast, just because I can't simulcast stream. Well, this is a problem though, because the notification isn't coming up.
Yeah, well, I actually, I don't think I got a notification, to be honest. I did get the messenger message, but I thought that was for afters. Hence the confusion on my end.
Well, I've been getting some complaints lately about Chad.
Are we still online?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, you're getting complaints about what?
The channel. Difficulty. No, nobody's getting notifications anymore.
Oh, okay.
Stuff.
Yeah. It's going around like blue.
Yes, nobody knows my name. This is the way I've always been. Just because I'm not a big guy who goes on himself. Because this is team, but somehow my name's gotten out there. So.
Oh, that's good. That's because everyone's speaking.
KGB. I think RCMP. CSIS. Shut her down. Notifications are racist. Shut it down. Shut it down. Okay, like he's streaming right now.
Is he?
He has to be.
But it's not showing up.
It's not showing up.
Oh, well.
It is 10 o'clock on Atlantic. It's 10 o'clock. You got a reminder?
Huh?
Who's got a reminder? If somebody wants to post a reminder, please. Or let me know if you don't have a wrench and you can't. Kendall, you have a wrench. If you can just copy and paste the link in there, that'd be great. Nobody.
Okay, well, since you're live, I'll let you do your live thing. I still got to put kids to bed here, so.
Okay. No notification.
So I better hustle.
Okay. I will talk to you later.
All right, bro.
Okay, bye. Okay, does anybody have the actual link? I'm going to have to see if Jordan can send it to me. This is very odd. It's streaming. It's streaming. Where is the streaming? Yeah, I'm getting all. Ding. Hello. Anybody? Nobody has the link. And I'm sitting here looking like a fool. Oh dear. Oh dear's got a great channel. Working really hard. Gosh, you guys, you just all work so hard. It's amazing. Breaking news. We will skip by that section. Okay. I don't know what's going on. Perhaps. Let's see here. I'm not seeing anything. I like this ring. Hello.
Yeah.
You're live on the air.
Yeah, so when you follow the link on Facebook and that, it just takes you to
The channel.
his YouTube page. So
I'm not getting Nova Scotia guy. I'm not getting a notification here.
no, I'm not either. So I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully just technical stuff, and we'll be there soon.
Technical.
See, but I'm gonna hang up so I can tune in.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. Okay. Bye. They're great. Gosh, just a big team we are. What's going on? He did post on Facebook. Must be running late. Okay. I would tell jokes, but not really funny. Maybe what I'll do is I'll get a coffee. That's the problem. There's no coffee. How can you do a show without coffee? Watch Ortis on the 5th. Nova Scotian guy and I were talking about Ortis amongst other things earlier this evening. Please be patient with me. Technical difficulties. Coffee, one moment. Maybe the Smurfs got in there. Is that what happened? I guess everybody knows my name now. I tried to be sneaky. Not sneaky, but I just don't like talking about myself. Yes, I'm so happy. You know, he's really being generous and giving us credit. You guys credit. Doing a lot of hard work, you guys. Not going unnoticed. Again, many thanks to the tipster. That document. There are contact Oh, I've got to get O'Deer's channel in there. Derp, sorry. There's contact information if you have tips below. Also channels for everybody. I'm sorry, I should put, I will, I promise, I'll put in O'Deer's channel. On the Tweeties. On the Tweeties. Does Tara know you're live? I don't know if she does. I've been officially franked. Maybe that's what this was all about. I'm just going to get stood up. Okay. That not working. We'll try this one. And that's not working. Nothing seems to be even scheduled. Interesting. You'll text her. Okay. 90 of you in here. Howdy, howdy. Fifth was very informative. I heard about it. The Ortis case is very deep, but I think that would take, honestly, a lot of time to do. But 1 hour, it would be a good opener, I suppose. The link is posted earlier. Yes, no, that's where we are. YouTube.com/ we'll try that. Well, that's not a good sign, is it? That looks like some serious smurfing. Silver is real money. Not found, 404. How can that possibly be? I believe I spelled that right. Oh, wait, no, sorry, my apologies. I'll go like this. Oh.
Paul Palango, I'm glad to have you back on the show. It's I think you were on talking about this same story. It's probably about 3 months or so ago, maybe a bit more, but man, a lot has changed since then. How you doing over there?
It's good. Glad to be back, Jordan. And a lot has changed.
Yeah, tell me about it. Now, I'm glad to see you're with Frank Magazine now, doing a series of articles. Frank is a bit of a dangerous magazine, but you're certainly a bit of a dangerous journalist with some of the stuff you're not afraid to put stuff out there, and neither are they. So before we jump in, we'll talk a bit about Frank and your articles with them. But just for people who didn't catch the last episode that you were on, could you just take a minute and introduce yourself? Who is Paul Palango?
Well, I used to be a daily journalist. Worked for a number of papers, including the Globe and Mail, where eventually I was a reporter, sports editor, city editor, national editor. I was in charge of investigative reporting for a number of years. We won a series of awards over the years for some of the work I had done. And I went on to, left the Globe in the early 90s and wrote 3 books on the RCMP over the course of the next 12, 15 years. I've been a frequent commentator on the RCMP, and since 2000, I've been living in Nova Scotia, where I'm a glass artist. Huh. With my wife, Sharon McNamara, and I, we have a store we sell. Before COVID, we were selling to 50 stores around North America. And we make fancy dinnerware and sculptures like glass cats, which I've become famous for.
Glass cats. I got to order one of those. I'm in the market for a glass cat.
Well, send me a picture of your cat, Jordan, and show me his face, his chest, his paws, and his tail, and I will turn it around and do a caricature of it and sign it for you.
Sounds good. Well, you're certainly a man of many talents then, because the articles and the work that you put into the writing is one thing, but just the amount of investigation and connecting dots that you do in this story is just mind-boggling. When I first learned about you and your work here, it was the article you did. I believe one of the first one I read was when you were in McLean's, and that article just kind of blew up the community that's discussing this case. But now you're still at it now with Frank Magazine. The editor of Frank had a really interesting post explaining why Frank Magazine and Paul Palango were such a good fit. But why don't you tell me what led you away from the more mainstream, like McLean's and whatnot, and now towards Frank Magazine? What are they doing for you that others aren't?
Well, they're letting me write stories. I mean, one of the problems is that the mainstream media has essentially shut down coverage of this almost from the beginning. That's one of the reasons I got into it, because my sense of the story early on was, okay, after a couple of weeks, they're going to drop this story, move along, and let's pay attention to something else. And then COVID and the COVID lockdown in the Maritimes was another problem. Even if the journalists were interested in it, they couldn't come to the Maritimes to cover the story. And my sense was that the newspapers like the Chronicle Herald in Halifax devoted no time or effort to the story, and nobody else really did. The CBC did a few stories. That someone had to do something because it was in the public interest that someone do that. And my concern was that 22 people were murdered, and it appeared to me, based on my experience and my intuition, that looking at the facts early on, something seriously wrong had happened here inside the RCMP. But I can't convince the papers to do anything. The Globe and Mail, the Star, I sent stories to them. I tried to get stories done, but the editors would just yawn. They're not interested in covering this. McLean's, I found, I have a story coming out in the next couple of days, probably the last one I'll do with them. And it's been a big fight to get the story in. And it's a timeline of what really happened at Portapic. I invested my own time, energy. I financed it. I did all that stuff to cover this story, but eventually it'll get out. It's just, and I finally said, I have this Lisa Banfield story that sat around for 3 months at 3 different or 4 different outlets. Nobody wanted to run it for various reasons. And out of frustration, I called Andrew up at Frank in Halifax and says, look, I've got this story. He took a look at it. He says, nobody will run this? And I go, no, nobody will run this. And he says, this is a real problem. So that's how that's how I got there.
Wow. And now, before we get too deep into the mainstream coverage of this story, let me ask you, why do you think it is that the more traditional media like CBC and Global, why do you think they aren't interested in following the threads that you and so many others are basically obsessed with?
Well, I'll correct you. Global's actually tried to do some stuff, and they have a podcast. But the big newspapers are they're just not involved. And the real problem is, I think I threw a wrench into the monkey works, whatever, when I did this story back in May on Wortman getting $475,000 out of Brinks, a couple of weeks before the massacre. And right away, and from other stories I had done where sources suggested to me there's something else going on bigger than the murders, that there's a cover up and all these things are going on. And I think the easy thing for the mainstream media to do is write everything off as conspiracy theory. If it doesn't fit the established narrative, it's a conspiracy theory. They don't, like from the outset, I said the police are covering things up. They're not telling us the story. There's misinformation and deceptions being used here. And then the mainstream media and the editors are going, oh, well, who are you to say? The police wouldn't lie. Well, you're seeing now that bit by bit, not only in this case, but in other cases, the Glenassoon case in Halifax, the YBR case going out in Vancouver involving Robert Jaskansky's death and what happened to the Mounties there. Serious questions about the integrity of this force. And I think slowly it's coming to the point where I'm able to say flat out, the RCMP lies. And you can't disagree with me anymore.
Yeah. No, let me ask you, where is it that, like, the information that you're collecting and putting together that's drawing you to such strong conclusions and giving you such strong opinions, like, where are you getting your information, if not from where a lot of the mainstream would, like RCMP press conferences or whatnot? Like, where are you collecting this stuff?
Well, I've used, as I saw, I called it early on, performance investigative journalism art, or investigative journalist performance art. Better syntax. And so what I've done is I'm looking for places to publish. I'll write the stories and try to get them published. And if I can't get them published, or I need help, I've developed a whole bunch of people who are helping me. I mean, there's this whole group, the Discord, which is all these sort of 300 or so investigative citizen investigators who are just concerned about this. You're looking at little gray cells, which Seamus Gorman does, and he talks about it. He's bringing people to the fore and doing a job from Alberta. I've gone on the Rick Howe talk show in Halifax dozens of times. He'll have me on for anywhere from 15 minutes like he did today to an hour on other days, like a couple of weeks ago. And every time I go on, I'll talk about things and then solicit information. I'll say, like today, I said, okay, I got this document on the weekend that came to me via Seamus about the memoranda, the moratorium on destroying information, like breathtaking document. But I got that because I think I was on Rick Howe, and I said, well, I need help from the inside. Can somebody corroborate some of this stuff? And then voila, it appears. Same thing happened back in May when I said I'm trying to prove Wortman got $500,000 out of delivered to him by Brinks. Does anyone out there know anything? And the next day I get a call saying it was $475,000. I said to the person, well, how do you know? He says, I've got a video. So it took me a week to get the video, but so I'm using every sort of arrow in my quiver to get this. Plus, I'm putting in a lot of legwork and phone work. Driving up to Portapic, I've been through the scene numerous times, mapped out the routes, mapped out the timing, and the RCMP story doesn't make sense. I can say that flat out. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think at this point, that's like an objective fact. I think people who've been following this since the beginning and seeing the story slowly change, I think there's no question about that. A lot of your recent work, specifically the articles in Frank, have focused on Wortman's then common law partner, girlfriend. She's now named, and people know publicly far and wide, her name is Lisa Banfield. Her story seemed to really change from the beginning to present. And again, that's what some of your recent work in Frank is touching on. The original version of her story that would have come out like in the days after, in the very first press conferences. Why don't we start with that, and then we'll follow through with things that kind of raise a red flag and maybe tell that there's more to it than what we would have thought originally. When you first heard of this happening, what was the story that you knew regarding Lisa Banfield's involvement in her experiences that night? Like, what is the official story, I guess, is how I could put it.
Well, that's the whole point. The narrative keeps changing over time. The original story back in the hours after it happened from someone close to the investigation told me, Wortman blew up because his girlfriend was leaving him, and her new boyfriend was there, and they were tied to a tree, and he killed them and did this and da 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 da. Then it became, oh no, she escaped. Then there was no boyfriend. Then she was handcuffed in the back of a police car, a decommissioned police car, and she miraculously escaped and hid in the woods for 8 hours and didn't come out until the morning. And then they found out he had this other police car. And then that I was able to show that wasn't true. That doesn't make sense. And eventually you start to piece together all these things that eventually the house and when he started fire to the workshop. Mm-hmm. Well, the question, Jordan, was I've asked everyone this question. This is the point of this timeline that's coming out eventually. I don't know when. It's been there for like 4 or 5 weeks trying to get it published in various publications. Eventually, I'll just send it to Frank or Ottawa Life and they'll publish it if I have to. But the point is, and I'll ask you this, when you think of Wortman's house and warehouse, where do you think they are in relation to each other?
I've never seen, I've seen a lot of maps of the area, but I've never seen one where things were very clearly put together.
Well, I'm not asking about maps, just in your head, where do you think they are?
Oh, well, the way I see it is the both tucked up off the road a little bit, and I see them as a couple lots apart. Okay, in reality, that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. And then I went up there a couple of months ago and drove around and mapped it all out. And Leon Jogri, who Banfield one of the few people who survived the massacre, mm-hmm. Took me on a tour. And the house is at 200 Portapique Beach Road, halfway down the road on the right-hand side, heading towards the Bay of Fundy. The workshop on a map is sort of across the road from it on another lot, but it's not really. The only way you can get from the house to the workshop is either through a narrow path, which you can get probably a four-wheeler down, not a car, not a truck, or you have to drive on the road. If you drive on the road, you have to go north on Portapique Beach Road for about 4/10 of a click or something like that, half a click, to the intersection of Orchard Beach Road, then down Orchard Beach Road for probably another half a click or more, maybe 7/10. So it's over a kilometer drive from his house to his warehouse. And in the narrative, they talk about, oh, well, he started the house on fire and he started the warehouse on fire. Okay, well, where was Banfield at that time? Mm-hmm. In the previous narratives, they said she was handcuffed in a car. And then he went crazy. But in the later narratives, he went crazy before she escaped. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't handcuffed. There's no mention of handcuffs. And then the real problem in that story is, the location of where all the people are killed. There's 3 pods of killing. 2 people are killed on Portapique Beach Road at 293 Portapique Beach Road. So he's at 200, they're at 293. They're close to the water, the Bay of Fundy. He'd have to go right out of his driveway to kill them. Mm-hmm. If he killed them, depending on what time he did it. But then he'd have to drive 1.5 kilometers all the way around to get to the warehouse. So was Lisa with him when that happened? Mm-hmm. Was she in the car? When did he kill these first people, John Zoll and Elizabeth Jo Thomas? Mm-hmm. We don't know. But then he goes around, and then there's 6 people killed in the vicinity of his warehouse. Lisa McCauley, Clinton Ellison, Greg and Jamie Blair, and then Frank Gullinchin and Don Madsen. So the next thing in the timeline that becomes important is a guy named Andrew McDonald smells smoke and stuff like this. He drives down the road with his wife in the vehicle, and he sees a police car back into the driveway at Gullinchin's house. And he said, oh, there's a fire there. Oh, the police are already there. He drives down the road. He doesn't see any dead bodies because it's dead. It's night. He drives back up the road. The police car comes out, starts shooting at him. He realizes it's Wortman, drives up the road and gets to the first police car. It's arriving. Well, he tells the first police car it's Wortman, and he's in a police car, and he's shooting at us. So the police are there, and the RCMP have fudged the time that they got there. So the first police car was there, they say at 10:26. Well, if that's the case, and others arrived in the next few minutes, and McDonald said Wortman was going on Orchard Beach Road, where was Lisa? And
that means he couldn't have come back. It's unlikely for that he'd come all the way back there, all the way down the road and kill the Zolls. So the Zolls must have been killed first. But he had time to go down the road, the other end of Virtue Beach Road, and kill Aaron Tuck, Jolene Oliver, their daughter Emily, the fiddle player, and Peter Bond and his wife, who lived next door.
Mm-hmm.
But the police were obviously there in time to do something. They're all armed with the C8 Colt rifles. They didn't do anything. They didn't chase them. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, no, the original story that came out about Lisa Banfield, what I've always wondered is, where did that come from? Because as far as I know, she has never spoke publicly, and the police have never spoke for her. So I wonder how, like, her involvement initially, that original version of the story. Do you have any idea where the original source of that was, of her, fleeing into the woods and whatnot?
I have no idea. And that's one of the things. There's all kinds of things that happen at the beginning that I pointed out that make me really suspicious of the narrative. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. If you'll recall, they have this about Banfield. They said, oh, she came out of the woods at 6:30, but they're putting out a bolo, be on the lookout at 1:07 a.m. for Wortman's girlfriend missing. That may well have come from Peter Griffin, his Wortman's criminal friend, who was evacuated around midnight. But the other thing that's really screwy about the narrative is, in the early days, they talked about he had a hit list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
And the hit list, all these people were evacuated because of this hit list. That was reported in the Toronto Sun as a fact, that there was a hit list. And when you started asking, well, where did the hit list come from? Well, we recovered it at the site. Well, excuse me. He burned down the house. He burned down all the cars. He burned down the warehouse right to the ground. Where did you find a hit list? And then the police eventually quietly put out a little correction months later. There was no hit list. So these kinds of anomalies in the story, like, where did the Banfield story come from? Where was Banfield all night? In the 4,000-word article that appears in Frank, I raised this question. It's below zero. She's wearing, according to Leon Jodry, she's got perfect makeup, a spandex top, yoga pants, bare feet, and it's below zero. Clinton Ellison is a big guy dressed in winter clothing, hid in the woods as Wortman apparently stalked him. He was there for 3 or 4 hours, and he had to go to the hospital for hypothermia treatment, and he was dressed. And I think I said he was killed. It was his brother Corey Ellison that was killed earlier.
Yeah, that's one detail that really makes me question everything. Like, as I followed the story and I saw the RCMP's story slowly change and things just not jive, I kind of, maybe it's the honest person in me, was trying to chalk it up to, it was mistakes. There's, they're putting the story together at the same time. But the Lisa Banfield story initially, I've heard it told by the mainstream and everywhere else that it was, she was handcuffed, she fled for her life and hid in the woods. But just like you described, I had Leon on the show as well on nighttime to share his experiences and his memories of her showing up that morning. And none of the version of the story that I knew to be true or thought to be true seemed to match up. And I've already been questioning the police, but now I'm questioning her story. But at the same time, there's a question of where her story even comes from. This comes up a lot in any coverage of this, is that what we're learning about her version of the story and a lot of other people's statements is coming from the search warrant documents that are slowly being released, although heavily redacted. But we are learning a bit about things that she said to police through those reports. Can you tell me a bit about what we know she actually said to police about her experiences that night?
Well, I'd like to even back up from something you said, like the original narrative, before we get into the ITOs and what's in the unredacted statements. In her narrative, the entire, what really has got me going and my intuition, my spidey sense going off, is the story keeps changing. It's like a manufactured story. That, the police had 3 different versions of what time they arrived, at what time the 911 calls came in. They have bloody records. Why do they keep fudging the times? And so they moved significantly around. Even in the latest story that I'm doing, we now find the workman didn't leave the scene at 10:35, like they've been saying for 6 months. It was actually 10:45. He was there for 10 minutes longer while the police were there. So that's been fudged. So where does that story come from? I don't know. As for the stuff, the unredacted documents, you have to remember, these are not interviews. These are excerpts and paraphrases from the interviews. And the RCMP has already shown and admitted there are many errors in there. And meanwhile, the conventional, the legacy media and others covering it are relying on this as being the story. No matter what Banfield says, to me, I want to see the interviews. I want to see the real 911 tapes. I want to see the call logs, because the RCMP is clearly putting out a narrative that fits the story they want to fit. And even then, it's kind of sloppy. And so what she says is, we went for a ride the day before and went and visited all the sites where he later goes back and kills people, or many of the sites. Don't you think you'd be a little suspicious of this if you're the RCMP? She went on the ride. She says she was out all night and could not possibly been there. Is obviously not telling the truth. Why aren't you doing something? Why are you prevailing with this right up to the last couple of days? She's a victim. We don't want to deal with her. We were not going to talk about her. And the media have done the same thing. She's a victim. In this politically correct bullshit, she's a victim. The only victims here, Jordan, are the 22 people dead. Those are the victims. Everyone else has to prove they're a victim. I'm sorry.
In the police early on in the RCMP early on in press conferences referred to her as victim and survivor and whatnot. And again, just kind of towing the line of her escaping from him after being assaulted or whatnot. But one of the things in the search warrant documents that came out was, it seemed to be her describing actually leaving the home, and Wortman telling her to be careful. There's gas on the stairs. That piece of information I found kind of telling. To the way I've always imagined it in my mind was her running out of there for dear life as he's frantically chasing her. But that doesn't really seem to be how it sounds in those documents.
No, it sounds like it's Nick Beaton, whose wife was murdered. Kristen, who was pregnant, was murdered by Wortman on Plains Road in Tebert, said, it sounds like he cares for her. It doesn't sound like he's trying to hurt her. And that's been my contention from the beginning. I've done enough, sort of work over the many years I've been doing this to recognize that, when a guy goes into a rampage and a spree killing, he usually kills the person closest to him, sort of the object of his anger, and then goes and kills a bunch of other people. He doesn't tie up that person, go kill a bunch of people and come back and save them. I said this like 6 months ago. That doesn't make sense. That's not how it works. And so where did she go? What was she doing? Was she with him? Was she with the police overnight? Was she at someone else's house? She had to be somewhere out of the elements because she couldn't have survived in the weather. So you think the RCMP, why are the RCMP gifting this to her? If they're saying she's a victim and she was a victim of abuse, well, prove it. There is no proof. There are statements by people saying, well, someone, Brenda Forbes, one of the neighbors said, she saw this happen in 2013 and she called the police. But the police say, no, she called about Wortman being an ass on the street and stuff like that, and made no mention of Lisa. So much of this is constructed and dubious that it's hard to believe. But the problem, Jordan, is that this original narrative comes out and the media is terrible about adopting original narratives. And you can't change that narrative in their heads. So no matter what I'm doing and what I've been doing, it's impossible to get the Globe and Mail or the Toronto Star or the CBC to change their narrative. The CBC is sort of coming around a bit in certain areas, but they all stick to this narrative. I mean, I had a filmmaker who said, contacted me 4 or 5 months ago and said, I've been commissioned by the NFB to do a film on this, a documentary. And it's okay, I'll talk to you about it. And I talked to him, and And well, we can't go into that stuff because they only want to do the domestic violence angle. And I told him, I said, Jason, I got some advice for you. And this is back in May. I says, if you're going to rely on the domestic violence angle, you might as well not even rent a camera, because by the time the story gets done, the domestic violence angle is going to be long gone. Mm-hmm. And you see where it's going now. It's sort of fading.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I don't follow the kind of the undercurrent of the community talking about this case the way you or Seamus do by any means. But when I did the episode of my show with Leon, I was really surprised to see family members of the victims commenting in support of Leon, who seemed to be what he was saying was kind of made a lot of people question Lisa's story. I was really surprised to see family members of the victims encouraging people to look into her. And I saw more than one. And that really opened my eyes because I didn't know that was going on. And that kind of set me off on reading more. And, and I think your pieces and Frank, I have this annual subscription to Frank magazine. I know the magazine itself comes out in stores tomorrow, but I could read the articles online today through my subscription, and that just put into words a lot of the stuff that I was kind of fearing. And you do such a great job of, you give your theory, but at the same time, there's enough facts and inconsistencies in the official story to, make it all more believable than I think the average news watcher. If what you know about this story is what you learn from watching CBC or reading, a major newspaper, when you really get into what's going on, that story, it's just not adding up. And one other thing is, and I'd like to hear you comment on this, is it seemed like from the beginning, now we know now that the police did have some question of Lisa Banfield's involvement. I understand the initial interviews they did with her, they weren't your typical interviews. They were you'll know the terminology, but it was like a type of interview that you would use for someone that you have some suspicion maybe involved in a crime or an offense. Can you talk? I think it was called a caution interview.
It's a caution interview. The first interview was done 2 days after, like on April. No, she was interviewed on April 19th. But the point is, Lisa Banfield was, rescued at Leon Jodry's house at 6:30 in the morning. And one of the first things she did was call this lawyer friend of hers in Toronto to try to lawyer up. And the lawyer called another lawyer in Halifax who's told me about this. And they eventually got a third lawyer. We don't know if she had a lawyer with her that day, but she definitely was trying to get a lawyer. And the guy she was dealing with is a very sort of mysterious guy in Toronto. The second interview took place about 10 days later, I think on April 28th. And that was done by Staff Sergeant Greg Vardy, who's a polygraph expert. The RCMP says she wasn't given a polygraph, but it was a caution interview. And a caution interview is given because you have reasonable grounds to suspect she may have committed a crime. We don't have the details of that interview. We have a summary of the interview, and that's it. So we don't know what really happened. And the fact that she hasn't come forward is very disturbing because the families want to hear her stories. The family many of the family members suspect, let's put it this way, dark thoughts about her. From my perspective, getting back to what you were saying earlier, when I was doing my stories originally that were critical of the RCMP, a number of family members, well, firstly, all of them, because I didn't even try to contact them, the ones who did contact me were not happy with me. But eventually, I remember Nick Beaton calling me one morning around 8 o'clock in the morning and saying, Paul, I want to tell you I haven't talked to you, but, I want you to know that all the families are on side with what you're doing. You've opened our eyes to all the possibilities of what are going on here. And essentially what I've told Nick and other family members who now deal with me is that I see myself as sort of a journalistic pathologist, that I'm there to defend the dead people, to cut through the crap, cut through the bullshit the police are giving, and find the real story. And we're getting closer and closer every day. I can feel it.
Yeah. And now let's get into her charges. Again, initially at press conferences that the RCMP hosted, it seemed like they were fully on her side. And sharing that original narrative of her being a survivor that escaped or whatnot. We know now that they did these caution interviews, which maybe tell a slightly different story, but now it's come out, just days ago that her and I believe her two brothers were charged.
Her brother and her brother-in-law.
Her brother and her brother-in-law are facing charges relating to supplying him with either weapons or ammunition, within a period of like 1 month prior to the shooting. I suppose this all goes to support your theories that there's something not being told to the average news watcher or the civil or the citizens from the RCMP. Like, when you heard of these charges against her, were you surprised to hear this?
Well, not really. I sort of laughed because this is my friend Scott Anderson from the Fifth Estate, who did the Cameron Ortis piece on Fifth Estate last night about another RCMP screw up. It's worth watching. It's good. I said to Scott, and he had previously done the Fifth Estate piece on Mayerthorpe years ago, and how the RCMP screwed up there and all the things they did to Cheeseman and Hennessy, the guys who were associated with James Roscoe, and they went to prison for a long time. And Scott looked at the charges and said, "Oh, this is the old tired RCMP playbook: delay and deflect." So these charges, to me, to people, other policemen I've talked to, and ex-policemen, say this is a tactic by the RCMP to basically either fire a warning shot at Banfield to shut up, don't say anything, continue not to say anything, or we'll have more serious charges against you. Or it's a way of creating the only sort of court case here or legal action that can be used to delay a public inquiry. Oh, we can't have the public inquiry until these charges are dealt with. And then what are the charges? Supplying ammunition, 223 ammunition, which is, I'm not a gun guy, but people I've talked to says, I don't think there's any guns that Wortman used that had 223 ammunition, were capable of 223 ammunition. I think he had 45 mil 9 caliber, maybe something else. But I don't know if he had that kind of gun. And even if he did, it's a minor charge. So I think it's a delay tactic. I think it's there to muddy the waters. I think it's there to warn Banfield to shut up and her family, because they may think, I and others are getting close or they're getting nervous. So it's this game going on. It's like a chess game with real people.
Mm-hmm. That seems
and I'm watching it, and basically my tactic is to watch it and to strike where I see an opening,
And a lot of Nova Scotians, a lot of Canadians, certainly the victims, they're expecting to learn the truth and are expecting full transparency from the RCMP. And I think that what you wrote in Frank about the moratorium that the police have on destroying evidence related to this story, that's something that just seems completely unacceptable and frankly is quite shocking. Tell me the story of how you learned this information and and what you make of this moratorium.
Well, I'll have to put my chip glasses on here because I don't know if you show the moratorium read, like the headline reads MD 218. It's under Royal Canadian Mounted Police letterhead. It comes from their InfoWeb web page on their intranet. And it says the headline of this 4 pages is Moratorium on the Destruction of Information Involving Gabriel Wortman Pertaining to the Investigation of the Mass Shooting in Nova Scotia on April 18th, April 19th, 2020, published October 15th, 2020. A moratorium, like I had a number of former senior police people call today, they're just appalled about what's going on. Like the whole use of the word moratorium means you have been destroying evidence.
Yeah. Not anymore, though.
And you will continue to destroy after a certain period.
Okay. I took it as, that's not a common word for a civilian to use, but I took it as like it's something we were doing, but we're going to stop doing it for the foreseeable future. But is there any indication that they had been destroying specific documents and any idea of why they would have been? Like, it just seems like it should go without saying that we're not going to destroy evidence related to the Canada's largest act of mass murder that the country is rallying for a deeper inquiry into. It just seems kind of the fact that they even need to put anything related to that in writing makes me scratch my head.
Well, that's right. That's exactly it. It sums it up. The very fact, in fact, one former executive level Mountie, top Mountie, said to me, he says, the very fact that they have to put this in writing tells you how seriously sick the force is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an ex-head Mountie. So you're looking at a situation that I've been reporting this, and in the Frank story that I did on Sunday about this, I mean, this came to me from, Little Gray Cells,
mm-hmm.
and was rooted to me. But I've been writing and talking about this for months about, the so-called, as one Mountie put it, they're pasteurizing evidence. I mean, I had a deep throat call me back in May that initiated the whole confidential informant thing, where he said they're changing things, they're doing things. And then I talked to others who told me how the system works and how they can get into their pros database and change files, make things disappear, which you'd think wouldn't be possible. But, the one quote I used in the story saying there's never been an audit of the integrity of the database in pros, ever. There have been other kinds of audits, but the government has never conducted an audit on the integrity of the database. And every copper I've talked to says it can be manipulated by the supervisors, and they can get in there and change things, make things disappear, or bury it so deep that you need sort of a submarine to find it. So this is what's going on. So why is it going on? Because they have to. I've been told that my CI theory or auxiliary police or something is not far off. And about 2 weeks ago, I was told by the members, the one member of one of the dead family of the dead, one of the dead people in the massacres, that they were approached by someone in law enforcement who told them that someone in Wortman's circle was an informant or agent. So maybe not Wortman, but someone in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know who that is, but it sort of fits what has happened. Because Jordan, if you turn this around and you look at why did the RCMP not call for help from Amherst Police, the nearby Truro Police, Halifax Police, Stellarton, which is not that far away? They didn't call for any help. They sat on it. I have a story coming out saying bodies were still lying on the road at 9:30 in the morning the next day, and people were driving by them. They didn't even have the crime scenes blocked
mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
So why were they doing this? Well, if you go back to the original story in Maclean's back in May, one of the things that we got was the undercover manual for the RCMP. And in the undercover manual, it has a whole sort of detailed list of what to do in a situation where an undercover operation goes bad. And the things you do in that situation, among other things, is don't call in other police forces, contain the thing, and do all the things that they have done. Radio communication, call in other Mounties to provide help. What they've done is a textbook example of what you do when an undercover operation goes bad. It may well have been just total incompetence, but there's this other paradigm that sort of fits the situation as well. So if that's the case, that's the reason they're deleting things. They're trying to hide things because they can't reveal what really happened. Because my original deep throat source back in May said, this is, when you find out what this is, it's so bad, it's going to make the 22 murders pale by comparison, which is difficult to believe.
So you are forever following leads, hearing from confidential sources. Meanwhile, the official investigation's happening. Do you think we're going to need to wait the 2 years for this inquiry to eventually release its findings, or do you suspect that there's enough information around here that we're going to be able to find out beforehand from unofficial sources? Or do you think the inquiry is even looking for the truth?
I don't think the inquiry is set up to look for the truth. It's quite clear that you say 2 years. Well, I see the Lisa Banfield charge as part of the obstruction. I see other things that could possibly happen. I see that the Minister of Justice in Nova Scotia, Mark Fury, in any normal situation like this, 22 total complete failure of policing, the Justice Minister would be gone. He's still there, and the Premier's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they protecting? He's an ex-Mountie. So I think the inquiry itself is contaminated because Mr. Justice McDonald and Leanne Fitch, the former police chief in Fredericton, the original appointees, were supposed to do a review with no witnesses, and they agreed to that. We'll just do a review, dot the I's, cross the T's, slap a few hands. Let's move on. Well, the families railed against that and protested and started marching on police stations. And okay, we'll have a public inquiry. We're going to call witnesses. But then you have McDonald and Fitch back as the panelists. Well, they've already agreed to do essentially a cover-up in the views of the public. They shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
Fitch herself is, she is compromised in so many ways. People say, "Oh, look at her. She's, she appeals to the feminist agenda. She's the first lesbian police chief in Canada. She's this, she's that. She's a fair person." In the previous year, she was appointed to the RCMP Management Advisory Board. There's a picture of her in February of this year standing with Lee Bergerman, the Assistant Commissioner of Nova Scotia, welcoming her into the fold. And she's supposed to be the person sitting on this public inquiry who's going to be provide sort of a balanced and disinterested view. I don't think so. And the last person, Kim Stanton, is a specialist in Aboriginal affairs and restorative justice. They keep pounding this square peg into a round hole. They want restorative justice in this murder case, which means things held behind closed doors, so people aren't embarrassed. We want to protect the families. Well, the families don't want to be protected. They want the truth. They tell me this all the time. They tell everyone this. But you don't get the regular media reporting this. It's really frustrating. So I see this as an attempted cover-up. So what's the way to deal with this? Get all the information out before the inquiry even starts and force them to examine the truth. So that's why this document, this 4-page document, the moratorium on the destruction of evidence, is so critical, because now we can build a story based on the fact that the RCMP is doing this, that has been doing this, and we can do it with confidence. And we don't have tinfoil hats on. This isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. It's actually a fact. And the other point, last point on this, Jordan, this article came out on Sunday because I got it Saturday night. Andrew Douglas from Frank Magazine in Halifax put a series of questions that are in part of the article into the RCMP on Sunday. Now we're going into Wednesday. They still haven't responded. For those of you who think this is not a real document, the easy answer for the RCMP to say was, "Oh, there's that Palango again with another fairy tale. Don't believe this." No, this is 4 days now. And I think they're caught like deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do. I know from police right across the country, and police forums and everything. As one policeman said to me today, he says, every lawyer going into a criminal case from now on is going to have this in his briefcase. How are the Mounties going to get a conviction when they've got how are they going to explain this? That we're destroying evidence in a active massacre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
before anything's even been found out.
And just to be clear, that this document about the moratorium on destroying evidence, that didn't come from any official sources. That was anonymously sent to the host of the YouTube channel, Little Gray Cells, who passed it along to you. Do you have any reason to think that this isn't a real document?
As I said, Jordan, if it's not a real document, the RCMP one Sunday would have said, laughed us. That's not even a real document. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And Monday they didn't say it, and Tuesday they didn't say it. We're going into Wednesday tomorrow, and they still don't have an explanation. And I'm sure that, by now, the Globe and Mail and CBC and others have had to wake up and see what this is and understand the implications of it, and maybe start asking some questions that really don't fit. And it's difficult for them to do this because it doesn't fit the narrative of the story that they've developed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this blows up the narrative of the RCMP just made a few mistakes.
Yeah, and
it's actually go ahead.
And it further chips away at whatever credibility they possibly are clinging on to in relation to this case. There's the amount of, like, to see families marching in protest of the RCMP, to see, you know, people online just pointing out like little gray cells. We talked about them already a few times. People like that are just pointing out all these mistakes. You're putting it into these eloquent pieces that are being published. It's just another thing that makes you think, you know, there must be more. There's either more to it, or the amount of inconvenient screw ups is just astronomical that for that to come out. Now, let me just ask you the last question here. Is, you mentioned you have more coming out in Frank. What's next for, like, I'm sure you're working on 100 things that are going to blow our minds in this story. What's the next shocker? What are you working on now?
Well, the story that's coming out in Maclean's, I'm not sure what form it's going to be in, but eventually we'll get out, is showing that what happened at Portapic that night. It's absolutely shocking. Mm-hmm. And no one, they sort of, the CBC Fifth Estate did a piece last week that sort of touched on it, but it's like TV. They got 41 minutes. They got to have a lot of pictures. They couldn't get the complete story out. I will get that complete story out. But I'm also looking at some other things. I don't want to tip my hand in where I'm going. It's one of the reasons I don't participate in any of the citizen group conversations. I mean, I was invited in recently to sit in a chat room or come into a chat room, and all I said was, "No, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Say hi to everyone. You got anything there for me? Let me have it." But Jordan, what I've done is, and this is the thing that I think has helped me do what I do, is because I appreciate the work that all these people are doing, all the members of the Discord, all the police on the inside who are leaking things out to try to get some sort of a sense of justice here. And I respect them for what they're doing, and I'd like to promote what they're doing, because this is sort of the way of journalism right now, because of the failure of the journalistic institutions in paying attention to these kinds of things. They're doing a million things. You look at the Globe and Mail, the Star, and they're doing a million things, but they're saying nothing. You read everything every day. There's something different. A whole, bouncing 1,000 balls in the air every day, and move on the next day and bounce 1,000 other balls, and there's no focus. Like in old, the old mainstream journalism used to have people who could drive a story every day, write about it, stay on it, treat it as a beat, and drive the story to a conclusion. Now it's like, oh, we accepted the narrative. We'll do 2 or 3 stories. Let's move on. We'll cover this when the public inquiry comes along, without asking any of the basic questions, doing any of the continuing investigation to get at the real truth. Because to do that is a threat to the institution itself, the RCMP and the government. And I think that's what has to be done. And I invite the citizen journalists to, amp it up, find out anything, and don't have to tell me, tell anyone, tell you, tell your favorite reporter, but get it published. And the only codicil is, the problem with the citizen journalists is that most of them don't have the ability to recognize what the real story is, or to synthesize information in a way that makes it acceptable and powerful. And that's why you have to rely on people like me.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end it. So, Paul, let me just thank you for, again, another enlightening hour of having my mind blown by you. I think a lot of people are really interested in what you have to say and what you're putting together. So how do people follow along with you, other than buying Frank magazine and probably Maclean's magazine soon?
Well, it's hard right now because, there's contact me. I keep people informed of what I'm doing, but Frank at least will give me a regular outlet.
Okay. That's a match made in heaven, you and Frank. I was so glad to see that.
Well, it was the line where, I said to Andrew, I said, you're Frank by name and I'm Frank by nature.
There you go.
And we both laughed about it. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, that's it, Paul. Thank you so much for your time and for all the hard work you're doing. And I'm sure wherever you wind up next or whatever you do next, we're going to hear about it anyway.
Well, thank you, Jordan. Call me anytime. And thank you for thinking of us and keeping this going.
Awesome. Have a great day. A great night, Paul. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. We're going to have a short break here, maybe just 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm going to be right back with Seamus from Little Gray Cells and his buddy Steve LTT. So we'll be back in, again, just 2 or 3 minutes, so you can argue amongst yourselves in the comments there. Or talk nicely, whatever people do on the internet. I have no idea.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Oh, there we go.
We're going to hop over to the...
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. We're going to hop over to the... I like this picture, kind of. Whatever,
oh,
man.
that's awesome.
Jesus, whatever. Okay. So, links down below, and we'll join Jordan over on the other channel. Great.
Hello.
Yep.